This presentation about life after death is unique because it's my own personal experiences. There's a ton of information on the internet about this subject, so I don't want to go over the same things you can find on your own. So these stories are my own perspective based on my own experiences. And because of these experiences, I am comfortable in the knowingness that we do live on. From a young age, I had many dreams with pets and loved ones who had left this world, so it's always been a very familiar subject for me. Although my dad wasn't my first or only experience with life after death, I put it first because it had such a tremendous impact on me that I think you will see as I tell the story. My dad and I had a very tumultuous relationship. Without going into details, I experienced a lot of heartache at his hands. I know now that I signed up for these experiences and it doesn't affect me the way it had when I was younger and things were different. Suffice it to say, regardless of that relationship, I love my dad because, well, he was my dad. We love our parents. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? I had grown up Catholic, although never really felt in alignment with that belief system. Even still, when my dad died, I struggled quite a bit with where he was going to go or what would happen to him in the afterlife. Let me go back just a little bit here. My first dream experience with my dad was on the night that he died. I don't particularly like that word because it sounds so final, and I don't feel it gives you the big picture. But it's a word that's often used, so for the sake of this video, I'm going to use it because it's familiar. His face had filled my inner vision as I slept, and he was crying. Over and over again, he kept apologizing to me for all he had done. I woke up with a start, and seconds later, the phone rang, and I would get the news that my dad had passed away. Not long after his funeral, I'd have another dream where I walked into a coffee shop. My dad loved his coffee and his cigarettes and chocolate donuts. So it wasn't a big surprise that he was there holding a cigarette, a chocolate donut in front of him with a cup of coffee. I just shook my head and said, "Wow, Dad, some things never change." He didn't notice me or seem to pay any attention to his surroundings whatsoever. And I woke up. Not long after that dream, I had another with him walking over a bridge with a man that I would eventually learn may have been his AA sponsor, Alcoholics Anonymous. Although I had many more experiences with him, the final one would be the most powerful. I had walked up behind him. He was squatted down and he was moving some kind of building material that looked like bricks with his mind, creating something. What really drew me in was this beautiful light all around them. As if he sensed me, he stood up, turned around, and looked at me. I now realized this light was emanating from him, and I was astounded. I exclaimed, "Dad, you've changed." With a great big smile, he answered, "Thanks for noticing." This time was invaluable with my dad. It taught me that soul keeps learning and evolving, even after we leave this life. Our beliefs create our reality, and this seems true for the afterlife as well. The wonderful thing is, we don't have to stay in the same belief, thought, or emotional patterns that create that reality. We can also evolve and create bigger and better things for ourselves. I want to take this opportunity to share three of my most favorite books on this subject. There are many more wonderful authors, including Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and Raymond Moody, among numerous others. But if you're just starting out, these three cover just about everything. Dr. Eben Alexander was a neurosurgeon. And what is so fantastic about his story is not only the incredible details that he gives you while he was in a coma, but the fact that he was brain dead. So, all the usual explanations that doctors would give about neurons firing, and this is why you see the light and you have these recall of memories, that wasn't possible in his case. So, there had to be something more. And if it's not the brain, then it leads you to the question, what was it then? Wisdom on Life After Death, What Happens When We Die by Harold Klemp is a small but powerful book. You can buy it for less than a cup of coffee. And it has a lot of stories in it of people like you and me sharing their experiences. And even some exercises you can try to have experiences of your own. In Michael Newton's book, Journey of Souls, he was regressing his patients to past life memories when he stumbled across in between lives. And these are all documented in this book. I want to get back to my personal stories though, because I think they're important for me to share. Nan actually passed away before my dad. She had been the rock of our family. My mother worked full time, so was my grandmother, that mostly raised my brothers and I. We were very close, to say the least. So when she had her stroke and then died, it felt like a part of me had died as well. She was in the hospital for a short time before the doctor announced that she wasn't going to make it much longer. I was the one who volunteered to stay with her that night. In the morning, my older uncle took over so that we could give the news to her youngest son, my other uncle. He didn't live close by, so it required a long 3-hour drive. And we all feared he would not take this news very well, but it had to be done. After being up most of the night, a 3-hour drive, and the ordeal of having to tell a man that he wouldn't see his mom again, he was incarcerated, my brothers drove back with me asleep in the back seat. At some point, I woke up when I felt this great swoosh move through me. I sat straight up and stared at the clock while I asked my brothers, "Did you feel that?" They hadn't. Sure enough, when we got home, we were greeted by my uncle, letting us know that Nan had passed quietly away while we were gone. Those were the times where cell phones were big and clunky and more expensive, so we didn't have one. And yes, you may have guessed, was at the exact time I had felt this magnetic energy rush through me. A few years after that, Nan's other sister was struggling with cancer, and she lived alone after her husband had died a few years before. I got a call by another of her sister to please go check on her because she wasn't answering her phone. This had happened before, so we had a key this time. My aunt and I drove out, and when we got there, my aunt being a very nervous person, we both decided it would be best if she waited in the hallway. When I walked in, I immediately looked to my right and saw her laying on the ground. I ran to her side and knelt down beside her, but it was obvious she had been there for a couple days in a very, very hot apartment. So you can imagine what she may have looked like. But I didn't smell anything. I didn't feel anything bad. Just, I thought maybe it was shock because I felt like I was in this bubble, completely loved and protected. And I could hear her in my ear as if she was right there. And she had this way of saying my name. It had this little twang to it, which I can't for the life of me repeat exactly how she did it. But she was calling my name and she kept telling me, you know, that isn't me. You know, that isn't me, over and over again. It wasn't until later that I had called into this radio show who had a medium on it. And he was explaining his experiences. When he took my call, he immediately began to talk about this situation from years before. I hadn't had a chance to say a word except for hello. And he told me that she was so worried that I would freak out by what I saw, that she had been calling on God and all of the angels to protect me. And it was then that I realized that was the bubble that I had felt. It was really quite a gift. It's these lessons that my loved ones have taught me, and so much more. Love never dies. We are soul. We don't have a soul. We are soul. And we live on beyond these bodies. So there's nothing to fear. There is much, much more, but I'll leave you with that for now. Thank you for allowing me to share my stories from my heart to yours.